Hello, everyone, and welcome to Magma Ragers episode 43. Coming at you a bit late this week due to Christmas. So, Merry Christmas to those that celebrate it, even though that's slightly belated now. And we're going to be talking about the year in review. That's going to be our main topic for today. I'm joined by Pandemonia as usual, and Menlyn is joining us as well. Welcome, guys.
Hey guys.
Hello.
Okay, so this is going to be the last podcast episode for this year. Our first year as a podcast in Hearthstone, pretty much. And so we're going to be kind of summarizing the year so far and our thoughts on it. This is the first year we've seen the 3 expansion format, where we've had no adventures, and just the straight up 3 expansions. How do you think the year's been overall, and with the 3 expansions, starting with Pandemonia, maybe?
So it's been I think overall been an interesting year. We've seen lots of new things announced from Blizzard. We've seen the meta go from being very diverse to not, to like a new meta. So I think all around it's been a good year. With regards to the 3 sets, we still have from last year some of the adventures. So I think we'll really see the full impact of it like middle to end of next year, once the adventures are fully rotated out.
Yeah.
Then I think we'll see really the impact of the format.
Yeah, I think it definitely does add a certain, some would argue maybe a higher cost barrier as well with the 3 expansions. You need more cards. It can be a little bit more
Yeah.
difficult to get all the cards you need from the 3 sets. So, what are your thoughts so far on the year in review, Mainland?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, speaking about the 3 sets versus the adventures, I think it's there are pros and cons. Like the adventures are a lot cheaper and they're a lot more accessible, but having the additional sets, there are a lot more cards
Mm.
and it makes the meta a lot more diverse. And at the end of this year, I mean, almost 400 cards have been released compared to previous years where it was just 200. So we've had a lot more cards and a lot more options, and the meta has been quite diverse
Yeah,
throughout the year. But it has been a lot harder for some players to keep up with all those cards, and there isn't really that downtime between the expansions when you can save gold and put towards the next expansion. You're always just having to save gold, and as a free-to-play player like myself, it's pretty tough to keep up.
yeah. No, it definitely can be tough to keep up. But I mean, as you mentioned there, the meta has been very diverse because of the number of cards we've had. I mean, we saw some really like golden times, I'd say, during the Ungoro, until the kind of Druid infestation hit, with Knights of the Frozen Throne before the nerfs there, and even towards the end of Knights of the Frozen Throne, we saw some more interesting decks emerging. So it's going to be interesting to see how the Kobolds and Catacombs meta settles down as well. I mean, we're still pretty early on, but we're seeing some pretty powerful decks rising. Q Block, for instance, the one we spoke about last week as well. So yeah, I mean, overall, I think it's been a pretty good showing for what the 3 expansion format can do for the meta. Putting that many cards. Sometimes when you have that many cards, it actually takes a while to get to some of the cards that are maybe a little bit more forgotten, to really experience them and experiment with them. So I think it can really help. Keep the meta varied, even though it can be a little bit more costly to players. But Blizzard have had some more initiatives this year for kind of free packs, with the expansion launches. Obviously, there's been a fair number of free packs as well as the like festival stuff they did, with the
Yeah,
arena,
and they've
which is kind
and
of
they're
like
free
free packs.
legendaries as well as
Yeah,
a big change for many players is the change that you cannot open duplicate legendaries anymore. So it
yeah,
has getting a bit more for your pack, but you still need a lot of packs.
yeah. That's a good point. That was quite a big change actually, that happened this year. And I mean, they have been making some spectator or some game clients improvements. Maybe not as many as a lot of us would like. I mean, recently they added the sort of pause functionality for tournaments, which is sort of long overdue, really. But that's gonna help a lot. It's not really gonna help your average player that much, but definitely gonna help tournaments. And obviously they added, a whole new mode essentially in the form of dungeon runs, towards the end. So at least they are doing some improvements on the clients as well.
Yeah, they definitely are. I mean, for us, we pretty competitive players, so I think that disconnect protection is going to be a really
Mm.
massive change going forward. But talking about the dungeon runs, I mean, it's a lot of fun, but I don't know how much longevity something
Mm.
like that has. You know, you play it, for me anyways, I played through it once, so I'm kind of done. I know a few people do it maybe twice or three times, but that's kind of it.
Yeah, yeah.
You know?
I mean,
Unless they keep evolving and changing the cards, I don't see it, lasting that long.
yeah. I mean, the only reason I've played through any of them more than once is in order to practice for like the Dungeon Run challenge. That's kind of the only motivation I've had to play through them. I mean, even then, I haven't completed it on all my accounts. We just did it on Zamox's account when we did the actual Dungeon Run challenge. So I've just played through some of the more difficult classes a couple times to try and learn a bit more for the Dungeon Run challenge. Um,
No, sure, but
yeah.
I mean, yeah, you're not once you finish with the Dungeon Run challenge, you're not going to be playing it anymore, much more.
Yeah. And there could definitely be some more things they could add that would help the free-to-play players as well, in the sense that giving them some more rewards for Dungeon Run. You can get the quest now that gives you a pack, a classic pack for like beating 5 Dungeon Run bosses. I got
Mm.
that once myself. So,
Spelunker, I think it's called.
huh?
I think the name of the quest is Spelunker.
Ah, yes, Spelunker. Um, but so I
Spelunker.
mean that can help in terms of making it kind of forcing people to replay it a little bit more. Um, but some people do seem to enjoy playing it a lot. So I mean, for us, yeah, who are more focused on the competitive side of things, it kind of feels like, well, what's the point in really going and replaying it when we could just be playing standard and getting to legend and all that. And that kind of nicely takes us onto the topic of your season this season, Menlyn. So you managed to get a legend sex-tuple this season. So that means legend on all 3 servers in both standard and wild. So the first question is why?
Well, last year this time I posted that I got Legend and Standard on all three servers, and a lot of people made comments like, you have no life, and what are you doing with
Wow.
yourself? Like you're just spending time, and I was quite insulted. I had a job, I've got a kid, I'm married, I've got a life. I was busy. This December, I was off work, so now I could really show them, what no life hardcore gaming can do. So there you have it.
Okay, so which would you say was the hardest? Wild, standard, any of the servers in particular?
Um, people always say Wild's a lot easier than Standard, and I kind of bought into that. But after doing, the climb, I would say it's not as easy as people say. Especially early on in the season, Wild's very tough. The player pool's really small, so you wind up playing the same guys over and over again. And these are usually your try-hard, top 100 finishers who finish every season, who know the meta. So that was pretty tough. So I found
Mm.
Wild a little bit difficult, but overall, I'd say, as per usual, NA is the easiest, and Asia and EU are, well, like about the same,
Okay.
and that,
Uh,
that that goes across the board,
yeah.
standard and wild.
Okay. Interesting. And for those who don't know, I mean, you did this through like multi-boxing, right? You didn't play every single one individually. So with multi-boxing, you were able to play 2 servers simultaneously, or were you playing more than that?
Now I can only play two servers simultaneously. Any more than that, and my brain just doesn't work very well.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay, so I mean that obviously helps a lot if you're trying to grind multiple servers. But
but I mean, it also costs. You do make more mistakes, and
yeah,
it is a lot harder to concentrate and focus on multiple games. So like, some often I'll be playing two and then I'll take a break on one and just play the
mm,
other, play one because it's a lot more draining to play both.
yeah, yeah, it definitely will affect your win rate, I'd imagine. So what um kind of tips do you have for people that are trying to grind to legend, be it their first time or just trying to consistently do it in standard or wild, or any server, as you can now give advice for all of them?
Well, I'm not much of an expert on Wild. This was actually the first time I've ever played Wild, more, higher than about rank 23 when I've used to complete a quest or something. But I mean, to grind Legend, like, for anyone who's gotten rank 5, like after that, I mean, that's when the game really starts, I find. So
Mm,
getting to rank 5 is just, the process. You're going to play that, you're going to play whatever and you're going to get there. Once you've pushing higher, you need to like really work on your win rate, because if your win rate's like 51 or 52%, you will get to legend, but it'll take you forever. So you need to maximize your uh, win rate, and you need to try and like minimize your mistakes.
Yeah.
So if you're not a regular legend player and you're not like sure about what you're doing, even you're a good player, you should think about your turns. Play a bit like Zaymok, not quite. Don't take that long, please. But you need to think about your turns. You need to think about like why you lost that game. And
Mm.
everyone's going to say, oh, there was RNG and I got unlucky. He just top decked this. And yeah, maybe that's true. But often there was a turn that you misplayed, or you could have taken a different line. And that might have not have been the turn before you lost. But that could have been turn 2 or turn 3.
Mm.
So you need to focus on them and try, get every inch or every bit of your win rate you can, because the
Yeah.
difference between like 55% and 60% is huge
Yeah.
when you try to climb to legend. And then after that, like it's about knowing your deck. So you can net deck, you can make your own deck, you can net deck and tweak it. It doesn't really matter. But once you found a deck that you're comfortable with, you must practice it. You must know its matchups in and out and how to play it and just get the hang of it.
Yeah.
So I decide every season. I don't normally get 6 legend, but I mean I've often gotten legend twice or 3 times. I usually pick one deck to play, and I'll play it on all 3 servers to get to legend, because the more I play the deck, the better I get with it. So it gets easier as the season progresses.
Fair.
So this season I played Aggro Paladin or Murloc Paladin, or variants of the two on all 6 servers,
Yeah.
and
Um,
you
yeah,
know
we
that.
we have both your deck lists here actually. So these are both your kind of own builds, right?
Um,
Not that they're too far off relatively standard
Yeah, I
builds,
don't
but
think. I mean, I don't think if you're building anything in that archetype, you can go too crazy, because then it's not really the same archetype. But
yeah.
um, for the standard build, that was done kind of. I've originally got Legend just as the expansion release. So I did it with a Murloc Paladin, which is not there. But afterwards, I changed to the Aggro Paladin for other servers, and I
Mhm.
I think I took a net deck from somewhere and tweaked maybe 2 or 3 cards. Nothing crazy.
Yeah.
And then with the wild list, again, I took, um, I forget his name now. Some guy got rank 1 legend wild. I took his deck, and then was struggling against a lot of other matchups, especially against the warlocks. So I teched in equality and spellbreaker to beat the warlock, which greatly increased my win rate.
Okay. Yeah, that's kind of where it comes down to also knowing your matchups. So like being able to tech the deck for those kind of matchups where you were weak previously. That's I think where that kind of deck teching skill comes in. So would you recommend these decks to people looking to climb? I mean,
Yeah,
obviously, if you managed to be pretty successful with it.
if you're comfortable playing aggro decks, I think Paladin's a really strong deck at the moment.
Hmm.
But don't fall into the trap of thinking aggro is easy. You just play on curve and you're gonna find yourself at legend. 3 hours later. It's not like that. I mean, there are often many different lines to play. You don't even power cards such as Call to Arms. You don't always play it on turn 4. You try and bait out a Hellfire, or try and set up the weapon. So if you get South Sea Deckhand out of Call to Arms, the deckhand has charge, things like that. There are lots of different things you can do to play it. So it's definitely good decks, but I think you should practice them and don't just play them and assume aggro is easy and just go face.
Yeah, yeah. So what are the kind of tips you would have for the standard list, in terms of mulligans or um, playstyle? What are you looking for from the mulligan? Because I think that's a place where a lot of players can make easy mistakes. So if we look at, maybe the mulligan versus like warlock or priest and like uh, rogue, for instance, those are two of the most common decks people are going to face.
For the standard list.
Yeah, for the standard list.
Okay, your key mulligan cards are what's Argent Squire, Lost in the Jungle, and Righteous Protector. Those are you definitely want a 1-drop. So
Mm.
you need at least one of those in your opening hand, ideally. Um, you've got South Sea Deckhand Patches and Archer's Veteran as well, but you don't really want them in your opening hand.
Yep.
especially patches. If you're getting patches in your opening hand, you're doing something wrong. So that's first tip. Make sure you don't get patches.
Get better. Get
Yeah.
So you
good.
definitely want those cards. The Knife Juggler is a really good card as well in your opening hand if you have those cards, as well as Call to Arms.
Yeah.
Call to Arms is a keeper, and usually if you've got a good curve, I'll definitely keep Corridor Creeper as well, especially if you've got, say, 2 1-drops. You definitely keep Corridor Creeper because then you can, if your board gets traded out, you can tempo back with Corridor Creeper for, 2, 3, even 0 mana at a later stage.
Yeah. So
Um, if you play, sorry,
no, go on.
if you're playing against Priest, and it's also good to keep a Rallying Blade
Hmm.
because they've got lots of early game minions that you can use your weapon to take the board. But the key point is go for those 1-drops, and then you kind of build your mulligan around those cards.
Yeah. So in something like the mirror or up against rogue or something, would you ever keep, let's say, Corridor Creeper if you didn't have any other keepable cards in your hand, or would you always mulligan it? Let's say you're going second in a scenario.
I'd keep, if I was going second, I'd definitely keep 1 Corridor Creeper.
Yeah, okay. Because the arguments or the discussion I've heard from a lot of aggro paladin players is pretty much that you always keep Corridor Creeper in those kind of mirrors. Whereas like against Warlock, where they're not necessarily going to play minions that are going to die, you might want to mulligan the Corridor Creeper if you don't have the right curve to put pressure on.
Definitely. I mean, in an aggro mirror match, a Corridor Creeper is, the first person to drop the cheap creeper. If the other player doesn't have it as well, he can usually snowball.
Mm.
But, if you look at the curve of this deck, I mean, there must be 12 1 and 2 drops, 14 1 and 2 drops.
Yeah.
So if you don't have any good keepable cards in your mulligan and you send 3 away and you keep a Corridor Creeper, it's a very good chance you're going to get a couple when you get them back. So it's a safe bet, safe gamble to take.
Yeah. And then cards like Call to Arms and Divine Favor. I've also heard people argue you just always keep Call to Arms in the deck. Would you agree with that?
I don't agree you always keep Call to Arms. I think Call to Arms is good, but I'd rather have a stronger curve and then play into Call to Arms.
Okay. Play for the top deck,
But
Call to
again, it
Arms or
depends on
Divine
the
Favor.
matchup.
Yeah.
Depends on the matchup.
Okay. Cool. Um,
Yeah.
yeah. So if people want to see you doing this multi-boxing or just playing grinding to legend any given time, you also stream as well, right?
Yeah, I do stream Twitch TV/Menlyn, shameless plug, hashtag.
Yep.
But
That's
I don't stream all the time. Most of the time I play, I'm not streaming.
yeah.
Especially if I'm playing 2 servers, I don't usually stream because then I can't concentrate on both things. But I think I tried one multi-box stream a couple of weeks ago.
Mm. Okay.
Maybe no, it was at the end of last season actually. I tried it, but if I'm playing one server, I'll stream. If I'm playing 2 hour ones,
Yeah. So if people have more questions for you about multi-boxing or just grinding to legend, really, they can find you there on Twitch or on Twitter. Is it worth tweeting at you on Twitter, or do you?
yeah, you can tweet at me, but you'll probably wait a long time to get a response. So think of it like sending post, not email.
Okay, okay. Um, cool. So do you guys have anything else you want to say about the year in general before we wrap up our Magma Rages for this year?
I think like this year we've had our fair shares of highs and lows. I'm looking forward. I think one of the things the Hearthstone devs, particularly, I've noticed are starting to be a little more attentive in terms of like reacting to community feedback a lot more sooner than they have before, which I think is really good.
Hmm.
I think the community engagement I think is a very important part of of the game and of keeping the community and growing the community. So I'm really excited to see what's in store next year. Really.
Yeah. I think another thing to highlight locally that's been really good this year as well is ESL Africa, which obviously Menlyn took part in, coming second at the season 2 finals at Rage, and Pandemonia and myself were actually casting then as well. So I think that's been really good for the local scene, bringing more,
Yeah.
even just international attention. We had a fair number of international viewers watching the finals at Rage, so that was good, and obviously just having more kind of top quality Hearthstone that's also brought together like North and South Africa has been really good. So
Yeah.
I mean, I think things are looking up. even though the HCT tour stuff is going to be a bit of a struggle for any African players. But I mean,
Yeah, I mean, ESL Africa was definitely a highlight for SA and for us specifically. I mean, we were all involved in it pretty
yeah,
heavily. But yeah, so I'm definitely looking forward to seeing that carry on and how this year pans out. But um, speaking about what the developer engagement that you mentioned, Dale, Pandemonia, sorry. Um, I find often it's like the engagement I feel is it's here and there, but sometimes I feel like it's a bit. I don't know what the right word is to say, but when they kind of say things like we changed Fiery War Axe because it's easier for players to notice that the mana cost has changed, they can see it, as opposed to, I feel like often they kind of
yeah.
talk, sometimes the engagement comes across as very patronizing.
Mm. The way they
Oh yes,
package
yeah.
those messages sometimes, especially for the people that are going to be consuming those messages, it can come across as quite patronizing because the one thing we have to
And they did the
recognize
same
is
thing
that
today, actually. If
oh
you
really?
read, there was a post about by
Oh
Ipsa
yes.
talking about why they're not going to put a keyword for the cannot be targeted by spells and hero powers, and he kind of said, well, putting a keyword makes it more confusing for players. I
Uh,
felt like it was that kind of it was community, it was
okay.
engagement, but it was kind of sometimes
Yeah,
I
it
think
was
it
a
would be
slap in
better
the
if he said
face
nothing.
almost, right?
Pardon?
Mm.
Yeah, like part of his comments felt like a slap in the face. It's like,
It did.
we don't
Felt
want
like
to,
it would be
we
better
don't
if
want
he
to
said
confuse
nothing.
people or make,
Yeah,
and you're
I
So
like, guys.
I think for people like us that obviously play the game a lot and take it quite seriously, I think it can feel very frustrating at times when they're kind of trying to pander to uh, people that like barely play the game, which is kind of what they're trying to do. They're trying to keep it inclusive, but at the same time, like, yeah, I mean that particular point, I'm not sure I agree.
but
Keywords can often make things easier once you
but
get
as
over
you
the hurdle of learning about them for the first time.
no, I understand the mindset, but the people who are reading the fan sites or checking,
Mm,
Reddit or whatever, the people actually reading that aren't, who are going to read those, posts
yeah.
aren't the people who can have a problem with it. So at that point, it's like if you're going to say something, it's like you're saying it to the audience that you're not pitching to, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, yeah. I think what you're saying is that sometimes even though the community interaction is or community communication is appreciated, maybe sometimes it needs to be packaged a little bit better.
Yeah, they
Yeah.
need to have a chat with, like a diplomat or, somebody just in terms of how to address it to the right crowd in the right way,
Oh,
to try and
Exactly.
avoid alienating as many people as possible. Like, I think that's the issue, right?
yeah. Let's not get any politicians involved.
Yeah.
But yeah, and yeah, but I'm also looking forward to, you briefly mentioned it, the HCT uh, coming up in 2018.
Yeah.
I know you guys discussed it a little bit before, but my situation is a little bit different from yours,
Yeah.
so I'm definitely looking forward to it and hoping to and seeing how it pans out and hoping. I'm not too sure about the tour stuff. That's kind of really the key point with this season, how frequent they're going to be, where they're going to be, and things like that. So all that's going to come out in January, which I'm really looking forward to seeing
Yeah.
or finding out, rather.
To, to put a bit more context on that for those that don't know, so you're obviously also a South African player, but living in Korea, so that makes at least accessing the tour stops a bit better for you. Are you gonna be taking the HCT tour seriously next season? Are we gonna be seeing Menlyn represented in the APAC region representing South Africa?
Uh, let's not get carried away, but if the tour stops are reasonable, I'm definitely going to make an effort to attend. If they're in Korea, I'll definitely attend, and possibly if they're nearby, I would attend.
Okay.
And then
Um,
obviously, seeing how that goes, you can take it from there. But yeah, I'm
yeah.
definitely going to make an effort. If it's close and it's viable.
Okay, that's awesome. Well, best of luck for that. Hopefully, we can see you making a break on the international competitive scene in 2018. But yeah, I mean, I think it's been a pretty good season. We've seen a pretty good year. Sorry, we've seen a lot of growth in Hearthstone, locally especially. After a bit of a slow start locally, I'd say. But yeah, I'm definitely excited to what 2018 will hold. So to all our viewers, thanks a lot for being with us this year. And you'll be able to look forward to a lot more content next year in 2018. Happy New Year for all those that will be out celebrating, and stay safe. And if you want to find out more from us or ask us any questions, you can find us on Twitter. You can find Pandemonia at PandemoniaZA with a 3 and a 0. You can find Menlyn on Twitter at MenlynHS. And you can find myself at dib_gaming on Twitter. And also, please go ahead and like and subscribe to the pod or to the YouTube channel. And you can also follow my Twitch channel, and you can also follow Menlyn and Pandemonia as well, who both stream as well. So thanks a lot, everyone. From Magma Ragers, have a good new year. Cheerio.
Cheers.
Cheers, guys.